Today's episode of Locked On Magic is all about guys who need to bounce back from last season. We're going to dive into Chuma Okeke's up and down season, plus take a look at some other players who are poised to bounce back in 2023. It's time for Tuesday edition of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 10th, 2022. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to dive deeper into Chuma Okeke's strange up and down season. We'll talk a little bit about what he showed us this year and where he needs to take his next steps as a young player, obviously coming up in this league. We'll also talk about some Magic players that are poised to bounce back after a difficult 2022 season. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, whether it is on your way home, whenever. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We truly appreciate being part of your rotation. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. There is a lot to like about Chuma Okeke. So, before we dive too deeply into things, let's just say this. Progress among young players is very rarely linear. Players will take steps forward, they'll take steps back, they'll, launch ahead, they'll struggle, they go through the rookie wall, teams adjust to how they're playing them, they take on new roles. It's not always a linear path. You always want to see that kind of upward trajectory. You want to see players getting better and clear signs that they're getting better, but you should, I know we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but especially with young players, you shouldn't necessarily give up on them because they have one bad season. As long as they're showing things that they can do and you can to start to define their role, it's really obvious. It's really clear that you should still trust young players. If there's something in there to grow and develop, then you should give that some space to develop. Depending on your timeline, of course. If you need to win now, then you don't have time to wait. But in a situation like the Magic are in, they have time to kind of let things ruminate and figure out. However, that clock is always ticking. I mentioned that a lot. Or there's different kind of clocks out there. There's your franchise clock. When you have a franchise star and that window for a championship opens, your clock is ticking, especially for a small market where there's a history of star players leaving because of an inability to put together winning rosters around them. With young players, that clock is always ticking too. When you're a rookie, mistakes are expected. You're allowed most of the time to play through mistakes as long as you can contribute something or there's some spark that everyone sees in you that you can play through. And that's really a lot of what happened with Jalen Suggs. We'll talk a little bit more about him, I think, a little bit later on, certainly later on this week, but later on today as well. Jalen Suggs is certainly someone like that. But by the time you get to year two, by the time you get to the end of year two, halfway through your rookie contract, there is something to say that you should have something a little bit more tangible. That clock, again, is ticking because a team starts having to make financial decisions about you. How much are they willing to pay you when you hit restricted free agency? Are they willing to match you? And if they're not, when can they maximize your value? This is going to be the tricky part about where Chuma Okeke is right now because his clock is ticking, whether he likes it or not, whether anyone likes it or not. There is no sign, no sense that anyone dislikes Chuma Okeke. In fact, everyone on the team seems to love him. And while fans haven't always seen the personality that the team sees behind the scenes, Everyone knows how, that this is a good guy to have on the roster, and a guy that is good in the locker room and does whatever the team asks him to do. And that's super valuable. But especially considering Okeke's age, now that he's 2 years in the league, we have to start asking the question, well, what is he? And that answer isn't so easy, because his rookie year went one way and his sophomore year went another way. Look, Okeke's raw numbers increased over his rookie year. So it's not like there are all these negative signs. Okeke averaged 7.8 points per game and 4 rebounds per game as a rookie. He averaged 8.6 and 5 rebounds per game and slightly more minutes, but better per 36 numbers as a sophomore. So good upward trajectory there. But he shot 37.6% from the floor and 31.8% from beyond the arc, both numbers down from his rookie season. And his three-point field goal attempts jumped from 3.1 per game to 5.3 per game. What's going to be really important for Chuma Okeke as the Magic move forward is really making sure that they define his role. I think a lot of Okeke's struggles this year came from just a certain lack of stability, a lack of certainty about what his role was going to be and frankly, how to perform that role. I think the things that Steve Clifford asked of Chuma Okeke were very different than the things that Jamal Mosley asked of Chuma Okeke, and their offenses are very, very different. And I think that Okeke suffering the injury that he suffered in training camp was behind the eight ball. Not that he's not smart enough to catch up, not that he isn't a good enough basketball player to catch up, but he was definitely behind the eight ball and constantly trying to catch up. Okeke to me offensively is a player that really thrives in structure, of knowing where he's supposed to be and how he's going to get his shots and how he's going to attack the basket. And that structure just, it wasn't there in Jamal Mosley's offense. Mosley's offense is a lot more read and react, a lot more dribble penetration, a lot more trusting guys on the ball to make decisions. And that isn't necessarily Okeke's strong suit. He needs to be in a spot and kind of know exactly where things are going to be. And so again, this is a point of growth, I think, for Okeke. And again, a consideration of, okay, does this guy really fit what we're trying to establish? Offensively, too, the Magic just completely changed Chuma Okeke's role as well. Okeke was a cutting slasher three-point shooter under Steve Clifford. Under Jamal Mosley, he was essentially just a three-point shooter. In a lot of ways, Chuma Okeke's role can be aptly described as 3-and-D, which I think is a good role for him. But in his sophomore season, it was 3-and-D without the three. And is that super valuable? On a team with very little offense, a team that is relying very heavily on his three-point shooting, I think that is part of a problem. Now, granted, Okeke dealt with a lot of leg injuries throughout the course of the season. I think he did struggle to get his feet under him for much of the year. He did have plenty of moments where he was able to hit shots, where he was on a good tear on his shooting. And it was very clear, okay, like this guy can be a player. This guy can be a helpful player for this team. And then he'd go cold for long stretches of time too. And the Magic just couldn't figure out how to get him out of that slump. The Magic probably need him to be a little bit more aggressive. They probably need to be a little bit more creative with how they use him. But essentially, Chuma Okeke's success is going to be determined by how well he shoots from beyond the arc. And so that part is concerning. And that is going to raise some questions entering this offseason of, okay, what do the Magic do with Chuma Okeke now? What do the Magic do with a player like this? It's definitely a major question for Chuma Okeke. And again, it's going to be the big question entering 2023. Because the one thing I think the Magic do know pretty well is that Okeke's a pretty good defender. He's got positive ratings on every catch-all defensive metric, which again, for a team that finished, I think, 19th in the league in defensive rating is a pretty good sign. The Magic had a 109.1 defensive rating with Okeke on the floor, which is 3 points per 100 possessions better than the team's average. So a positive impact there. He averaged 2 steals per 75 possessions and 3 deflections per 75 possessions, ranking him in the top 10 percentile in both metrics, according to Basketball Index. He was a constant at forcing loose balls, just being a pest. And while I think his on-ball defense probably a bit underrated and could still improve a little bit, Okeke was a passing lane disruptor, a help defensive disruptor. He was just a really solid defender. And again, if we're looking at guys that can fit into roles, that can support players that the Magic want to bring in, Okeke is a perfect guy for that. So again, it wasn't that Okeke struggled a lot this season, but we exit the season knowing, okay, Okeke can do this really well. He can defend at a really high level. Now it's about getting the other part up. Now it's about bringing up the shooting and being a better three-point shooter. And if he could do that, then we have something. Then we have a real player. But unfortunately, there are realities. Time does not stop. The roster constantly changes. The one thing in the NBA that's constant is change. And Okeke needs some stability, both the coaching staff, both the role, and frankly, just consistency with his health and his injury problems. Okeke can certainly carve a role on this roster or any roster. I think he still has a lot of value around the league. He's still a young player. He's on a rookie contract. He's shown that he can play at a high level and contribute. The question then becomes how? The question then becomes, how do you get the most out of this guy? How do you get him to reach that level of consistency? And now the double question comes, where do you find him minutes? Because Jonathan Isaac's coming back this offseason. We'll talk more about him in a minute here. Jonathan Isaac is coming back this season. They have Franz Wagner at the 3 or the 4, one of the forward spots. Wendell Carter might be claiming some time at the 4 as well. And then, of course, 3 of the top, 6, 7 prospects in this draft are power forwards in Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, and Keegan Murray. And then, of course, Chet Holmgren would probably push Wendell Carter to the 4 in some lineups as well. I talked about it yesterday. There is a roster crunch on this roster. The Magic are going to have to start combining and figuring out who they actually want to build around. And Chumo Kiki, his clock is ticking to figure out if he is part of that group. Because someone's not getting minutes. And I don't think it's going to be Isaac. And again, barring injury, but I don't think it's going to be Franz. And if the Magic do draft one of these big 4s that are in this draft, it ain't going to be them either. The big goal for Chuma Okeke, though, is to find consistency. We all see it. If he can find consistency, he has a place on this team. We're going to talk about some other players for the Magic that are due for a bounce-back season coming up here or will need to show a bounce-back season coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word for our pals at PrizePicks. Look, we all love playing daily fantasy games. But if you're like me and you played some of the traditional daily fantasy games, A, the scoring is confusing, and B, you're really just working to get your money back. The odds of you winning one of these giant pools against professional players with multiple entries, it's low. The thrill of winning is good, but you want to win real money, not just that fake money or not just little chunks of change or just hoping to get your money back. That's not the way to play. That's why I play PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy. It's a great new twist on daily fantasy games, and we know you're going to love it too. It's easy to play. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. So you look at tonight's games and you say, oh, I think Luka Doncic is going to score 35. You hit that over if it's over 34, if the number's set at 34.5 or more or less. You think that DeAndre Ayton's going to have 12 rebounds? Well, check that number and see if that's where the over-under is and make that prediction. It's really that simple. And PrizePicks doesn't just offer NBA. They have options on college basketball, college football, NFL, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, just 1 point. But you have to use the promo code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. Check it out today at prizepicks.com. Today's podcast also brought to you by Athletic Greens. This is a product that I've started using because I'm trying to focus in on my health. It's one of my New Year's resolutions. I'm trying to be a little bit more health conscious, a little bit better care of myself. One of the reasons why I'm starting to record in the mornings instead of at night. And Athletic Greens has been a good boost to my day and a good boost to my morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the good things. This is a fantastic, fantastic product that will help you live the healthy lifestyle you're always looking to live. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything while still tasting good. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing with the best things. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing. It's going to cost you less than $3 a day too. So you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy too, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen every day. Now make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's been available wherever you get podcasts. Definitely check it out because guess what Tuesday is? Tuesday's lottery day, almost here. So obviously, the Orlando Magic season this year was a really interesting mix, in my opinion. There were a lot of really positive signs. There were a lot of really good things. And I honestly exit the season feeling pretty good about where the Magic are. A lot of questions, a lot of reservations, a lot of things that still need to be figured out. And especially to reach the kind of goals that we're starting to set for next season. Obviously, next Tuesday is going to be a big day to figure out a lot of these things. But by the same token, I think that there were a lot of good things. The team really started to gel around an identity. Everyone really seemed bought into what this team is trying to do and what they hope to accomplish. There were a lot of things that were really encouraging and I think can really help this team kind of take a step forward. On the other hand, look, I'm a win-loss guy. At the end of the day, this business is about winning. It's about your record. The Magic had the second worst record in the league. They won only 22 games. So there is a lot of work ahead of this team. And as encouraging as some of the moments are, we just talked about Chumo Kiki for 12 minutes. As encouraging as some of these moments were, there's still a lot of work ahead. There's still a lot that this team has to accomplish and a lot that this team has to do to find the ultimate success that they're looking for. Not going to be easy to do, obviously. Not going to be an easy thing to do. And that is inevitably going to need some players who are going to have to take some steps forward and really improve in a lot of areas. Whether it's Terrence Ross bouncing back from a poor season, we'll see what the Magic ultimately do with him. Whether it's Cole Anthony finding a little bit more efficiency and a little bit more consistency. Whether it's a whole host of things. Chumo Kiki again finding that consistency too. There are a lot of things that this Magic team has to do to take its next step. And obviously the draft is going to play a big role in this, but there are definitely a few players who are going to need to bounce back more than any others. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about these guys, I think, in detail as we get through these player evaluations. We're hoping to have those done by the end of the week. We might have to bleed into a little bit of next week with those, just because of how things are going. And I'm going to be out of town this weekend. So there will be, that after Friday, the next time we will talk will be after the NBA draft lottery. So just be warned on that. But let's talk a little bit about Jalen Suggs in the season that he had and why it's important for him to take another step up. Look, we all hype Jalen Suggs. I will still hype Jalen Suggs. I think he had an interesting season. I think he showed some really good things, but I think he's still the most talented guard the Magic have drafted since Penny Hardaway in 1993. But Suggs struggled. There's no other way to put it. His shot just was not there. He was sped up all the time. He looked very much like a rookie. And I think there are now legitimate questions about, okay, where does he ultimately fit into the bigger picture? Again, we all celebrated getting him at the 5th pick. We felt like we were getting a steal, but very clearly Scotty Barnes is pretty good. I don't know if he would have been as good in the Magic's environment as he was in Toronto's environment. I think that was a perfect situation for him. But Scotty Barnes is clearly very, very good. Suggs shot just 36% from the floor and 21% from three. Just really bad numbers. And while he averaged 12 points per game and was able to score and get to the basket at will, it felt like he still struggled. He struggled to finish. He was one of the worst finishers at the rim. I think he was in the bottom 20 in terms of guards finishing at the rim with at least 2 attempts per game. He really struggled in a lot of areas, guys. And it was sometimes difficult to watch and sometimes difficult to figure out, okay, how do we move on from this? How do we improve on this? How do we get him to that next level, to that next area that he needs to get to? Again, just not a lot of easy questions when it comes to Jalen Suggs and the way that he played. We all see what he can do offensively, though. We see that he can get to the basket well. We think, we say he has a really pretty jump shot and a really pretty jump shot form. The shots just weren't going in. So there's plenty of optimism that he can get there. I would say his defense was really good, especially for a rookie. And his competitiveness on that end and his toughness and his willingness to kind of dive headfirst into contact, those are all really good qualities. And there's something there you can build with. Again, Jalen Suggs may not be the great scoring guard that we all think the Magic need, but if he turns into Marcus Smart, that's okay too. You can build with that. You have a player there that you can keep. And again, I think the most important thing that you can do coming out of a rookie year is determine, okay, can this guy play? Again, you're not necessarily giving up on a kid, but okay, you take a step back now and say, okay, Jalen Suggs may not be our star. That's probably going to be Franz Wagner at this point, but there's a role for him somewhere. We could clearly see where he will play a role. And again, he could still jump into that star category with an improved offseason, with a lot of work in the offseason. To say the least, the Magic have invested a lot in Jalen Suggs. It's not just that they used a very high draft pick on him. They are kind of shallow at guard. And so next year, and unless the Magic draft a Jaden Ivey or Shaedon Sharpe or go with the guards or find a guard somewhere, Suggs is probably going to be starting alongside Markelle Fultz next year. And in that starting lineup, or coming off the bench, backing up Fultz and Cole Anthony. It's going to be a challenge for him to say, okay, we're relying on you. Step up to the plate. Step up and make an impact. Step up and be the player that we know you could be, or be the player that we need you to be. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Jalen Suggs next year. And like I said with Chumo Kiki, the clock is ticking. Another year like this where he struggles to shoot, even if the scoring numbers are good, even if the defense is good. Now all of a sudden the Magic have to start assessing, okay, this is what this player is. And now we have to start building, assuming that this player is that. And so again, you're constantly being evaluated. The clock is always ticking. And Suggs is going to have to take a step up this coming season. It's a big, big year for Jalen Suggs. And it's a lot of pressure to put on a second-year player. But now we have to start seeing the growth. Again, you got to see that upward trend that tells you that a player is getting better. And again, it may not be what you initially planned on draft night, but there's very, very clearly Jalen Suggs can take that rope and move forward from there. We'll talk a little bit about Jonathan Isaac and what our early expectations are for him as he continues to say and continues to put out there that he is going to be back for training camp. We'll figure out what we need to do with him coming up here in just a moment. But first, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Obviously, I think the biggest mystery on the Magic's roster is Jonathan Isaac. The fact of the matter is we haven't seen him play for 2 years. We all know what he's capable of defensively. I would still argue that he's probably the only player on the team with an elite skill or a kind of proven elite skill. Markel Fultz is maybe getting there with his ability to drive into the paint and finish at the rim. Jalen Suggs, I don't think he's elite yet, but he's pretty good about getting into the paint. Just his decision-making and his passing and shooting and scoring aren't there yet. But, you need to collect elite skills, and you can't ignore guys with elite skills. If someone can be an all NBA something, that's something that you need to have. At the end of the day, this league's about talent. And we all say, and I say this, the Magic's biggest need right now is top-end talent. They need guys who are elite at something, who are so good at something that teams have to game plan for it or have to find a way to neutralize it rather than just kind of showing up and rolling the ball out and playing. Jonathan Isaac is that guy. And so I don't think we can ignore him or kind of discount him for anything. Again, I'm not sitting here saying the Magic should avoid taking another 4 because they have Jonathan Isaac. I think the Magic will still play Jonathan Isaac again this year. I think that especially early in the season, they'll probably hold him out of back-to-backs. I think that we will see him coming off the bench in some limited minutes and limited capacity. Jeff Weltman has made it very clear that they are being extra cautious with Jonathan because he hasn't played an NBA season or in 2 full years. Again, remember, January 1st, 2020 was when he originally injured his knee. He was set to come back. It sounded like he was going to be back shortly after the league ended up shutting down. He came back in the bubble. That's really not an NBA season. He only played 3 games, one preseason game and 2 seeding games, and then has been out since then. So Isaac really hasn't played basketball in a very, very long time, or hasn't been on the court in an NBA setting in a very, very long time. This hamstring issue is, Isaac's even described it as pretty minor, is a little bit of a setback, but he is still very, he's been on a couple podcasts, very, very confident that he's going to play. He's going to be ready to go by training camp. I personally hope that he's ready to go for Summer League so he can at least get some practices in during Summer League. Certainly not play, but get some practices in, get some run in. Again, anytime he gets contact with the coaching staff and able to just be on the court, I think is a good thing. But again, we're all waiting to see when Jonathan Isaac's able to come back and just what he's able to produce and what he's able to do for this team. Obviously, that is still a long way off. That is still a lot of time from now. That is still, there's still a lot of work to do. And the question then is, what can Jonathan Isaac provide? Obviously, it's sort of a blank slate for him. Again, I think I said this the other day. I want Jonathan Isaac on my roster right now. I want to see what he can do. I know what his potential is, but I am not counting on him. I think anything you get from Jonathan Isaac right now is a bonus. And again, it's just about assessing and evaluating, okay, what kind of player is he? What can he do? And so I think the Magic are smart to kind of plan around him. Again, don't make him a core piece. He is, coming off the bench next year. So you have that hole at power forward now to fill, whether it's Wendell Carter, whether it's someone in the draft, whether it's Franz Wagner sliding over. You have that hole that I think you do need to fill. And just kind of keep Jonathan Isaac confined to a role off the bench. And again, it's just about getting him on the floor. You get him on the floor, you figure out what you have, and then you move forward. I think that's really one of the big keys for him and for this team's development overall. And obviously, he's someone that just needs to play. Bottom line, the dude just needs to play. And when that happens, things will be a whole lot better for him and really for everybody else. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Locked On Magic. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of the places you download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_me. And of course, for the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. While I'm sitting here thinking about things, let's go ahead and plan on doing a Mock Draft Friday Twitter Spaces. We'll do that at noon on Friday. That way I can have everything prepped and ready to go. and not leave all my podcast listeners in a lurch before the NBA draft lottery. So we'll plan on doing a Twitter Spaces at noon on Friday. That'll be on the Magic Daily Twitter account. We'll do a mock draft Friday. We'll talk last bits and pieces before the NBA draft lottery and any other Magic questions that you have to get us through the weekend, through the early part of next week while I am out of town. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Magic. Until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.